Good morning, afternoon, and or evening, fellow gamers. Today, I'll be talking about what would be the best team for each world origin for a Buccaneer team in Pirate101. But, before we get into the video, roll the intro! Before I get to the part of the video where I state the teams, I need to talk about some things. Now, when I'm talking about these characters, I need to clarify their location and how I'll be placing these companions. I won't be putting companions in which you find them, but where they originate. An example of this would be Ratbeard, who lives in Skull Island, but rats originate from Marleybone and moved to Skull Island since Skull Island was only discovered by monkeys, and the only creatures that would be available in Skull Island were ones that originated from there. Or there can be a breed of species that was bred for evolution purposes, such as mice in Skull Island being bred from wharf rats specifically for the environment of Skull Island. The only companion that breaks this rule is Monkey King, who doesn't really seem to be a monkey since on the wiki it has its own category as a celestial, and has the title of a celestial trickster rather than a monkey trickster. So, from everything we've seen about Monkey King so far, he's from Mushu. The last thing I want to talk about is that this video will be different from others I'll eventually make since Buccaneers have two main groups being defensive and offensive, and all the other classes don't have that split. So, I'll be making two teams for this video rather than one, and I realize this seems strange because I haven't made any others yet, but let's ignore that confusion and review the team for Skull Island. The options for our team are Chantel, Peter Quint, Grimtooth, Barnabas, Sarah Steele, Mormo, Nanu Nanu, Oinga Boinga, Batacuda, Epop Orc Ramba, our Nuzlocke God and Savior! Savior? El Tiburon, and Fin Dorsal. Now, most of them suck. Batacuda! But the best team for an aggressive buck from what I can see would be Barnabas, Peter Quint, and Sarah Steele. I believe that this team is the best since they all can boost round 1 and then charge straight at the opponent. Barnabas contributes to the team if you give him Hold Line 1, V-Strike 3, and Blade Storm 3, since Barnabas will be an aggressor in this situation, and then he'll boost his own physical defense round 1 with Triton Song, and then charge at the opponent with Brutal Charge. Next on this team is Peter Quint, and why wouldn't you want to have him? He's amazing! You would still give him the classic chain epics, and then he'll boost the buck strength with Whale's Might, and then you send him off with Brutal Charge and he goes crazy on the opponents. Now, Sarah Steele is a bit of an outlier, but I believe she would still do well as a change-up on the team. Since she's a swashbuckler, I put her on the team to deal with privateers and to go through Musketeers Overwatch with Walk into Darkness. Using Walk into Darkness, she can mix up how bucks can attack, plus she has 4.5 movement points, so she can disengage too. She's an overall good mix-up on the team which don't hold back the team too much, and can deal with problems that most bucks have. Editor's note here, so yeah, I completely forgot to mention on Sarah Steele's epics, and I'd give her the same epic setup as her competitive setup, except trading First Strike 3 to First Strike 1, and then giving her Riposte 3, and you will understand why I did that later, because I have a thorough explanation of why I did that with another character, because I completely forgot to do it now. Now it's time for a defensive buck team, and that team would be Barnabas, Chantel, and Mormo. This team is made so the buck in Barnabas blocks out opponents with his boosted physical defense, and stops approachers with Hold Line 3, V-Strike 3, and Blade Storm 1 from Chantel and Mormo. Now, Chantel. I never used her as her strongest, but I believe she would have Overwatch 3, Burst Fire 2, and Double Tap 2. Using this will allow you to lower the accuracy of approachers while using the Barnabas block, which is a big competitive strat that I won't be explaining fully because it takes a long time to explain. In a nutshell, the Barnabas block has Barnabas and another companion run, and then Barn stops the approacher, protecting the other companion, or companions, behind him. Now, Mormo is a complete wildcard since he has no real good reason why he's here, but I can't really think up on who else would be here instead. I originally considered Scratch before I started working on the script to boost Chantel to annihilate opponents, and then I remembered that you don't ever learn where he originally came from. We know that his latest teacher, Papa Legbones, lives in Skull Island and is probably why Scratch is in the Hoodoo House when you find him, but Scratch has some associations with Sister Snake, Screech, and Darkcrawler in Cool Ranch. Also, he's a dead human, and there seems to be two main places where humans may live, being Darkmoor and Wizard City, so I didn't even attempt to guess where Old Scratch came from. So, I replaced him with Mormal since he can rebuff some opponents and deal heavy damage under specific circumstances, and has Crowsong, which will give Barnabas or the Pirate another epic, and increase their mobility to disengage in battle. The epics don't really matter too much since Mormal's epic pool sucks, and really only has one good setup, being Coward's Bane 1, Mojo 3, and Jobu's Ruse 3. That's all for Skull Island, and if you thought Skull Island had a little amount of companions, well, Monkista has a much smaller roster. The only companions for Monkista are Goronado, the Marchianus, Hoodoo Cornelius, Monkistador Veteran Sharpshooter and Initiate, Crazy Monkistador Crossbowman, Martin Velveeta, and Moresco di Velveeta. Now, since there's such a small roster, the teams aren't really the best, but when there's such a small roster, there are only so many options. The aggressive team would be Goronado, Hoodoo Cornelius, and Martin Velveeta. Goronado is on this team because he is the only Monkistador that is actually common in competitive battling for the direct purpose of being extremely aggressive, and you'd give him the same epics as you usually would. Next up to explain is the spoopy monkey that's behind a $30 paywall, and that's the monkey Hoodoo Cornelius. I'd give him a glass cannon setup who would have for Relentless 2, Blade Storm 2, and Second Chance 3 to nearly stop comboing on the opponents, and also he would need Second Chance 3 because his accuracy is 99, and that is hysterically low. I mean, the average accuracy for a buck is around 120, compared to Hoodoo Cornelius's pathetic 99. And also, bucks have troubles hitting swashbucklers, so imagine how hard it would be for Hoodoo Cornelius to attack swashbucklers. Last on the team is Martin Velveeta, and he would have Relentless 2, Blade Storm 3, and Second Chance 1 for his epics, and it functions similarly to how Hoodoo Cornelius's chain epics work. So basically, in a nutshell, they're all glass cannons. Anyways, it's time to talk about a defensive setup for a Monkistan team, and the team would be Goronado, the Marchianus, and Moresco di Velveeta. Goronado is in this team because, again, he's the best of the options, and then I chose the Marchianus because she starts with Repel Borders and has a notable epic pool she can choose from. The epics I would give her would be Repel Borders 3, Relentless 2, and Blade Storm 2. The reason why I gave her this setup is to defend Moresco from approachers and Relentless and Blade Storm to allow her to be capable of chaining opponents. Now for the last companion, it's Moresco di Velveeta. Vita? How do you pronounce it? Vita? Or Vita, or something like that. I have no clue, okay? Sorry if I pronounce it incorrectly. The reason why I chose him is that it's usually good for a defensive team to have a roster of various classes of companions, and especially ranged companions. So I chose Moresco since he is the only other musketeer besides the Monkistador Sharpshooter and the Crazy Monkistador, and there are no ranged witch doctors in Monkista. And I also think he's underrated and pretty cool. Now, Moresco's moveset would be Burst Fire 2, Double Tap 2, and Quick Draw 2, and this would allow Moresco to combo, and Quick Draw will allow him to get an extra hit off of Musketeers, and because he has no other good epics available. That's all for Monkista, and now it's time to head into the next world in the series, Valencia. The land of the unicorns, crabs, guinea pigs, and the Armada, and where you get absolutely destroyed when you enter for the second time. In Valencia, the options are Burgess Latro, Louis Labisque, Crab Hermit, Gaspar de Vol, Iago, Rodolfo Capafero, Contessa Argenta, and Haywire Marine, Dragoon, Musketeer, and Battle Angel. After looking through all these very good options for companions, besides the Crab Hermit, I came up with Gaspar de Vol, Rodolfo Capafero, and Burgess Latro for the Valencia-based offensive team. I put Burgess on the team because he is a great offensive companion with the second highest Bucanneer attack stat being 291, and he has a boatload of epics. And the epics that I'd give him would be V-Strike 3, Blade Storm 3, and First Strike 2. Now, you're probably thinking, Felix, why do you give him Blade Storm 3 rather than First Strike 3? Well, I did it because of the fact that it's Burgess's competitive setup to counter invisibility, but anywhere else it's pretty useless because you never see invisibility besides PvP. Anyhow, it's time to move on to the second companion of the bunch, Rodolfo Capafero, and I was considering to have Contessa here, but I chose Rodolfo since I personally believe he's better, but if you want to, you can swap him out for Contessa. The reason why I chose Rodolfo over Contessa is that everyone has coverage for invisibility, even in the story game. I mean, every crab thug in Armada Marine has First Strike 3, and I'd choose an extra 2 epics rather than a better power. Back to the topic of Rodolfo, I'd give him Riposte 3, Relentless 2, and Blade Storm 2, and you'd probably understand this setup because it chains and counters attack while boosting his dodge. For the last on this team, it would be the guinea pig that everyone loves, Gaspard de Vol, and I rarely ever used it since the only time I used it was in my privateer account, and I gave him terrible epics, and I never got that bond with him because I never used him because he sucked. Well, I gave him the bad epics, so that's why he sucked, and I don't have any clue about his setups. So, I had to look up a setup guide from Diffused Rubber Ducky, got sub to his channel, link in the description, and I found out he should have First Strike 3, Riposte 3, and Blade Storm 2. But that's his competitive setup, and I changed First Strike into First Strike 2 in exchange for Blade Storm 3 because you probably know because I just ranted about why. And that is what I believe a fully Valencian offensive team would look like, and now for the next group I'll be talking about, which is the defensive team for the Valencians, and which would consist of Haywire Musketeer, Dragoon, and Marine. This team was actually coincidental, but it ended up being satisfyingly beautiful since they're all Haywire Armada companions. The first member I want to talk about is the Haywire Musketeer, and he's here because he can blast opponents miles away and near infinitely always destroy close range opponents. The epics I would be giving him would be Quick Adjust 1, Overwatch 5, and Burst Fire 1. Emphasis on Overwatch 5. Yes, it's shocking, but the Haywire Musketeer can have Overwatch 5, which is super shocking, but he can learn it and it pushes the opponents back, halving their accuracy too, and it's overall super obnoxious to deal with. I'll get back to the Haywire Musketeer soon, but now it's time to talk about the Haywire Marine, which is fan-freaking-tastic with the Haywire Musketeer. The epic setup I'd give him would be Hold the Line 4 and V Strike 3, and this is to halt opponents when they approach, and then lowers the approacher's dodge stat by half, and increases itself by 50%. Doing this will allow the Barnabas stat to occur, and this will stop invisible attackers that sneak through the Haywire Musketeer's Overwatch. So, the Haywire Marine covers one of two problems the Haywire Musketeer has, then the other being ranged companions, and that's why the Dragoon is here to deal with that other problem. His epic setup would be Hold the Line 1, Relentless 2, and Blade Storm 3, and his setup would halt approachers from hurting the Marine and Musketeer, and it does its job of countering ranged companions by chaining them. Holy crap, look at the time. This video is getting long, so I guess I'll just make this a two-part series. Well, hopefully this video made you, the viewer, happy, and also roll the outro.